So hey everybody, what's going on? My name is Terry. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys and gals are all doing fantastic out there. One of my favorite YouTubers out there that might sound kind of weird to you all, considering the type of content I cover on this channel, is a Linux-based channel, a free open source type channel called DistroTube. Been watching him for a few years now, and I like his content a lot. I really do. He made a video the other day essentially along the lines of, what would happen if, Linux usage actually got up to the level of Windows or surpassed it, or just, what if the Linux user base continues to grow at the pace that it's going and it eventually matches everything else out there on the market. And, he made a lot of good points in that video, and this is just essentially my version of that because, a lot of you probably don't know this at all, but I actually had a YouTube channel a few years or so ago, oh my lord, almost 10 years ago now, actually. Wow, it's been a long time, y'all, where all I talked about was Linux. And, the channel kind of started like this year. I would just post videos about technology, about stuff I wanted to talk about, and then I started doing Linux-based videos, and my channel literally blew up in about a week. I went from, a couple hundred subs to over 2,000 in like a month and a half or so, and then after that up to over 3,500. I had over 1.5 million overall channel views, with only having around 3,500 actual subscribers. I was very proud of the hard work I was putting in on that channel of mine, but unfortunately, I got bored with Linux and I stopped making videos about it, and I ended up shutting that channel down because the amount of hate that I was getting in comments and messages, all that bullcrap about how I stopped doing Linux content. That's one thing I want to talk about just off the bat here, okay? And a lot of people might hate me for saying this, but frankly, I don't really care. And I'm sure a lot of you out there feel the same way, but are afraid to say it, which you shouldn't be afraid to say it. The Linux community on a whole, in my opinion, is kind, welcoming, answer any kind of questions you may or may not have, they'll even answer questions that you don't know that you had, you know what I mean? But the vocal minority, like the incredibly loudmouth, outspoken minority that really are just miserable people, like they make it their life's goal to wake up in the morning to see, wow, how can I be an ass to someone on the internet today? That's the kind of people I'm talking about. They are the vocal majority, in my opinion, even though they are a very, very small part of the user base. You know what I mean? Like the squeaky wheel does get the grease, the nail that sticks out gets hammered, yada, yada, yada. Insert other stupid phrase here to convey how horrible they are as people, But those are the people that were messaging me, berating me, trying to dox me, trying to find out my information off YouTube. Seriously, y'all, people are weird, all because I stopped making Linux videos, and I called at the time Linux was boring to me because I thought I talked about all I could talk about, you know what I mean? So until the community as a whole starts holding those people accountable and, oh, well, they're a really big contributor to open source. Okay, well, if you want your project to be associated with a downright nasty person, that's just one open source project I'm never going to use. Know what I mean? And I think I can say that, speaking for a lot of people out there as well. So first and foremost, if people want more users to come to Linux, you have to be more accepting, you have to be more welcoming, and more importantly, that people are going to have questions, so you have to be willing to help, That's just the way it is. Now let's talk about everybody's favorite next topic whenever you're talking about Linux, or as some people like to call it, GNU/Linux, or GNU plus, you know what, screw it guys, no. Whenever you're talking about Linux, and that is the software support. Now, fun fact here, y'all, my laptop here, it's a Lenovo IdeaPad. This thing runs Arch, by the way. It's actually CachyOS. For the record, y'all, I'm going to make a video about this separately, but CachyOS, I kid you not, is by far the best Arch-based distro I've ever used in my entire life. It is the only distribution I have ever in my life gotten DaVinci Resolve to work on. Just literally one click install, run like one little command to delete something that it actually doesn't need, and it works out the box. It just works. So Kashi OS, I love you guys. Y'all are incredible. But again, different video, different day. So other than DaVinci Resolve, because that is the editor that I use here on my main Windows workstation, there's a big difference in alternative versus a replacement. You know, like for my needs, Resolve is most definitely a replacement for Premiere Pro. But something like Kdenlive to do any kind of professional work, it's an alternative, not a replacement. And you know what? Don't get me wrong. You know, years ago, I loved Kdenlive. I thought it was the greatest thing on planet Earth. And the fact that you could actually go into the Kdenlive settings and directly tell it how many threads to use of your processor. So let's say you have a 12-core system, right? And you want to just, you know, give it maybe 8 cores or 10 cores to do its work. And you could use the other 2 cores of your system to do things in the background, like have something up on YouTube, watching videos, or working on something else. And that way there, your entire system's not just bogged down from exporting or adding effects to a video. So I thought that feature was actually very cool. But at the same time, though, because it's a free and open source project, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that, its feature parity to the big players in the industry is just not there. Okay, sure, you can do some basic color correcting. You could apply LUTs, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong, it's cool. You can do some sound corrections as well, like audio editing as well. But as far as, you know, like big umphy effects, big, you know, like big production level things, in my opinion, Kdenlive is just not up to the task yet. Yeah, there's other ones out there like, you know, Shotcut, what is it called? OpenShot, I think it is. And then there's another one out there called Olive that, from what I know, has been in development for a long time for their next big version, but it's still being worked on behind the scenes, and it's just, again, just not there yet, you know. And there's another one out there too that people seem to really champion on Linux as well too. I think it's called Lightworks, I think. I haven't touched that software in years because from what I remember, there was a free limitation for the free version of the software that you could only export in like 720p, and there was a lot of limitations. So again, the fact that I can use DaVinci Resolve, the free version, on my laptop now is incredible. And it even works with my Intel integrated graphics. I thought I had to have a dedicated GPU from either NVIDIA or AMD to get it to work, but no, it works just fine on here with my Intel iGPU on my 10th gen 1035 G1. Like, this is insane. I love it so much, you know what I mean? But then again, though, folks, Resolve is one of those industry standard pieces of software that so many people are actually moving to on Windows. So maybe that more people are moving to Resolve on Windows, maybe that'll translate to Linux usage later on down the future. I don't know, but you know, the big elephant in the room here will always, no matter how y'all feel about them, will always be the Adobe Creative Cloud. And let's just be honest here, folks. There are people out there, obviously, that are quite literally making their living with the creative suite of software, whether it's After Effects, Premiere Pro, you know, Photoshop, all that stuff. You know what I mean? So you can't just tell somebody, oh, well, if you use Photoshop, you can use GIMP, or you can use what's the other one, Krita. Well, yeah, you might be able to, but that's not the way it works. You know, personally, I have no problem taking the time to learn other software, mainly so I can sit here and tell you guys and gals about it. But if you have a company and your entire workflow depends on the Creative Cloud with their collaboration tools, all their AI functionality to speed up your workflows even just that much quicker for an even faster turnaround, I don't believe there's anything that you can use on Linux that would have all of those feature sets and then some coming in the future that could be a direct one-to-one parity for what you have in the Adobe Creative Cloud. Again, are there alternatives? Yeah, sure. But are they direct replacements? No. No, they're are not. And again, if you're somebody like me that primarily uses DaVinci Resolve, then yeah, sure, you have a really good shot at just transferring all the Resolve skills you learned in Windows over to Linux, because the keyboard shortcuts are all the same. There's nothing different about the functionality. It's literally Resolve on Windows, Resolve on Mac, on Linux. And that's great. There is a one-to-one parity for feature set and capabilities there. So that is really good. There is a slight limitation with the non-studio version on Linux to where it can't open MP4s or something like that, because there's a proprietary licensing agreement for the free version that it doesn't support it on Linux. But if you have the studio version, it has all those codecs and everything built into the paid studio version. So that's good to go. But as far as, like what I do on my laptop is that I record stuff in hybrid MP4 in OBS Studio, and then I run Shutter encode on my laptop to, essentially transcode everything from MP4 to ProRes, and then I load that up in Resolve, and it edits beautifully because it's ProRes. You know what I mean? Like it's a not very compressed video format, so I can scrub through my timeline even at 4K, and it plays beautifully. Like, it does take a little bit longer to export, but that's because one, iGPU, I only have 8 threads on my processor in that thing, and it's nowhere near as powerful as my main desktop. But I mean, if I have to make a video on it in a pinch with Resolve, I know I can easily. So that's great. And people can sit there and say all they want. Well, we have to start demanding these companies make software for all these different platforms. Here's the thing: you can do that, but they're going to tell you no. They're going to just tell you no. And why is that? Well, okay, here's the thing. Okay, guys, here is the thing. If Windows and Mac is my primary source of income, why would I spend the research and development to hire an entirely new team, essentially, to make my software for an OS that only has 4% overall desktop usage in the marketplace? You know what I mean? Or in the market share that everybody likes to talk about, Here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing. For example here again, okay? For me to hire on a team to rewrite or repackage, even to just going forward maintain my software on Linux, if it cost me $250,000 a year to maintain a team, to maintain my Linux packages and software and all that stuff, but the return on the investment of that software, let's say, is only $10,000 to $15,000 per year, whereas per year on Mac and Windows, I'm making millions, if not billions, it's not going to make a lot of sense. And you could say, well, couldn't you use the other income streams to, compensate for not making as much on the Linux side? Well, yeah, you could, but any smart business person is not going to do that, because they're all about the bottom line. And if they're wasting $250,000 a year maintaining a version of their software that a very small percentage of users are actually using, again, it's just not going to make sense. You know what I mean? Now, that might make some of you mad, and I'm not sorry, but that's just the way life works. So, unfortunately, you'll have to just get over it. But, yeah, so if you're an Adobe user, you're probably never going to be able to switch to Linux full-time. Again, if you're a Resolve user like me, no problem whatsoever. So, again, that's awesome. Now, another big thing that a lot of people like to talk about whenever it comes to moving to Linux full-time is gaming. And you know what? I actually will, backtrack my previous statements on this. Gaming on Linux no longer sucks. It's actually quite good, thanks to Steam, using, Proton, and how you could just run everything natively inside of Steam directly on Linux, and how there's an immediate translation layer in Steam now. And for the most part, a lot of Windows games do work on Linux now under Steam. Now, there are a few things where you have to, tweak and still use something called Wine, which is an emulation layer, but it's kind of funny because I believe Wine actually stands for Wine is not an emulator, but that's essentially what it does. It emulates the Windows subsystems and the protocols to, anyway, whatever. So Steam is great. Are there other ways to game on Linux that does not involve Steam? Yeah, sure. Again, there's Wine, Play on Linux, but that hasn't been maintained or updated, I think, for years. So disregard what I just said. Sorry. But if a vast majority of your games that you play is on Steam, I see no reason why you couldn't give any game you might have on Windows or Mac, well, Windows essentially, a shot on Steam on Linux. And if you enable the right Proton version, it should just work out of the box, which is pretty cool. Except if you play a game online that has a lot of DRM stuff, and anti-cheat and everything, then you sort of might be SOL, but hopefully fixes for those are coming soon too. Maybe, please. Because here's the thing, okay, folks, here is the actual truth. I love Linux. I love it so much, and I use it all the time in my day-to-day life, just so I could say I use it, just so I can contribute to the open source community some way. But unfortunately, until Linux does everything I need out of the box with very little behind the scenes tinkering, with very little behind the scenes, black magic to, first off, to like get everything working the way I'm used to it working on Windows. And you're talking to somebody who actually is tech savvy, who knows his way around the terminal, who knows his way around the back end of Linux and all that stuff. Your average end user will never actually take it seriously enough to move. And and if you're somebody that works in an office space to where you rely on Microsoft Office, yeah, sure, there's OpenOffice. There's, of course, the big dog in the room, LibreOffice, which, by the way, is a fantastic open source office suite, LibreOffice. But if you need the Microsoft Office suite, well, that's another reason why you can never move full time, or you could dual boot, or you could have two systems to where you have one system for Linux, one system for Windows. But a lot of people don't have that. Whenever they're at their office job, they get a company laptop, just like, well, this is mine, but like they get a company laptop that they use during their employment, and it either runs Windows or Mac, and that's what they use. So, I mean, guys and gals and guys, and everyone, I would absolutely love to see the Linux market share increase. And a matter of fact, if you're using an Android phone, you're using a version of Linux. Now, keep in mind, it's not full-on fat Linux. It's a modified Linux kernel with an Android, some system and firmware built on top of that, but the underlying system of Android is Linux. Same thing for iPhones. A lot of people don't know this here, but iPhone, from what I remember, is actually really built upon a version of Mac OS. And as we all know, Mac OS is a form of a Unix-like system called BSD. Now, to wrap all of this up, like I said a minute ago, would I love to see Linux market share increase even more than what it is now? Yes, I really would. But there are some limitations. There are a lot of drawbacks to moving to Linux full time if you don't know what you're doing. And let's be honest here, folks, while Linux is great and there are a lot of, beginner friendly distributions like Linux Mint, for example, I'm a big advocate for Linux Mint, especially if you want to just test the waters with the free open source software moving here and everything. Whenever things break, they can break big time. And you could say the same thing for Mac and Windows. Sure, not a problem. You totally can say the same thing for Mac and Windows, obviously. But because the user base is so much smaller on Linux, your issue somebody else may not have ever encountered, so they might not be able to tell you how to fix. To whereas if I get a blue screen on a client's laptop and I don't know what the error code is, I can literally just go to Google and look it up. Oh, this is saying it's just a CPU error because not enough voltage, or there was a piece of software that it was looking for in RAM that was no longer there because it crashed. So therefore it crashed the system because, hey, what I'm looking for is not there. And so like you can fix that stuff in about 5-10 seconds on Windows, but sometimes on Linux, especially if you're a beginner, if something breaks, you might as well just reinstall your whole distribution and start from scratch again. and I hate saying that, but that sometimes is true. And y'all, I cannot stress this here enough. I love Linux. I love open source software. Like tinkering around on my laptop is one of my favorite pastimes. And the fact that I actually have found CachyOS is going to be my main distribution of choice now. I love it. It's great. But will I recommend Linux to anybody in the near future unless I know for a fact that they are capable of maintaining their machine themselves without any kind of intervention from myself to help support that? Unfortunately, no. Maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, sure. I mean, how cool would it be if everybody was running Linux and everybody was able to just do what they wanted with their machines without fear of telemetry data, viruses, malware, all that stuff? Like, as an IT guy that does tech support for a lot of family, I cannot tell you how awesome it would be to never have to get a phone call. Hey, TJ, I think I have a virus. Can you come look at it? Not because I don't want to help, but because malware sucks. You know what I mean? And it takes a lot of time to get rid of it sometimes, you know? So it would make my life a lot easier if everybody was just running an operating system that couldn't get malware in the first place. You know what I mean? So I don't know, everybody. This is just me talking, just me rambling, just getting some thoughts out and whatnot. Of course, nobody has to agree. Obviously, free country. You can still have free thought as of right now. So with all that being said, everybody, what do you all think? Are you all Linux mainers out there? You know, do you contribute to open source software? Do you just use open source software? What's your favorite distribution or whatever it might be? Do me a favor, sound over the comments below, and I will catch you guys and gals next time.